Hello everyone. Today I will be discussing about language variations, the second part, which is the social variations of language. As we have discussed in the previous video, the social and regional variations of language constitute two big variations in language, which has been discussed further by George Yule in his books. And sociolinguistics is the study of social variations in language. So we are going to discuss specifically George Yule's 19th chapter, social variation in language. I also use additional sources for these discussions. So some issues to discuss in social variations include sociolinguistics and social variables, then social markers, speech style and speech shifting, style shifting, register, slang, and a little bit about Afro-American English. So the first issue is the social dialects. English is a big language, and there are two types of dialects based on social variables. The first one is sociolect, which is called sociolect is a social variables or social dialects, and idiolect, individual dialect. The class is a social variable, and then the words pronounced by people and speakers in certain class can be called a linguistic variable. William Leboeuf in 1960s did a very extensive study on post-vocalic R, such as in floor, whether floor or floor, in New York and reading. And he found that different social class may have different way of pronouncing the word R. As reported in general in this table, that the social class of upper middle class in Americans in both New York and Reading have different features of how to pronounce post-vocalic R. Certain study can be conducted in different contexts. Next is the social marker. Social marker are linguistic features which can be used as social signs for certain groups. Look at the table here, that the working class and middle class of English have different ways of using social markers, like we was too late or we were too late. I don't want none or I don't want any. He don't know how and he doesn't know how. So you will see here that middle class of English speakers in English tend to use more formal grammatical form, while the working class, which can constitute of lower middle class or lower class of English speakers, tend to use certain social markers, which quite different to the prestige group here. Next is speech style and style shifting. Speech style of individuals in certain groups or individual persons, one persons, can be influenced by various factors. Socially, factors include speakers' social class, attentions to speech, and speakers' perceptions of their listeners. We will be discussing the two first factors. So in general, the speech style can be divided into formal speech style and informal. With the formal one, the speakers tend to pick language and words more careful, and they pay more attention to grammatical issues and other features of linguistics in their conversations. While in informal speech style, um, speakers may not be very careful about this vocabulary selections or other grammatical features and linguistic features. And other issues which may be found in the speech style is there is a speech style shifting. So what we call style shiftings is when people shift their speech style to certain groups speech style in order to, for example, to make it closer, socially closer, or socially more distinctive. So it can be to make something closer or to form certain specific identity so you are different to the people in that group you are talking with. There is an issue of hypercorrections. This is especially when lower stages speakers try to use a prestige form associated with higher stages to sounds that they speak better. So usually when they do something like this, they offer you certain forms, and thus they also produce different forms or maybe odd pronunciations. So because they are not used to speak or conversate with that certain prestige form, so that's why it's a bit difficult for them to speak like how the real speaker in that particular group speaks and sounds. So prestige can be divided into two. Prestige is like a standard, more standard, better standard from what certain groups have. Prestige can be divided into overt prestige and covert prestige. With overt prestige, certain individuals change their speech in a form that is more frequently used by people in their higher social stages. So people tend to use more formal ways of communications in their particular groups, or maybe groups which they consider having higher social status. So it can be that, for example, like lower class of English used use middle class or higher class of English because they want to make or they want to sounds that they have style which able to reduce the social distance in their particular context. Another one is the covert prestige. This is a hidden stages of a speech style as having positive value that they may not exhibit style shifting to the same extent as other groups. So because certain individuals change their speech in the directions of a form that is less frequent in their speech, or because they are from higher and they may not be able to style shifts to lower prestige level. Next is speech accommodations. While people may shift their speech style because of their social class or because of their attentions to speech, they may also change their speech because of their perceptions towards their listeners. So, for example, like when we talk to people with different social stages, we also perceive the listener's social stages. We see them, and then it influences the speakers or our speaking style. So we modify our speaking style, our speech style towards the perceived style or away from the perceived style of the persons we are talking to. In general, we have two types, convergence and divergence. With a convergence, you will see in example here that when you talk to a friend and your friend's mother, you will use different speech style because you perceive that your listener have different social stages. On the other hand, in divergence, you want or you try to sound like others, but then you don't want to emphasize the social closeness. You want to create the opposite effect of social closeness. So you want to, you want to make a gap. You want to reduce the social, you don't want to reduce social distance, but you want to emphasize the social distance between the speakers. You will see an example here. The teenagers says, I can't do it, sir. And then teachers say, oh, come on. If I can do it, you can too. Then the teenagers try to emphasize, look, I kind of diet. So it's really strong accents here. The teenagers try to show his or her strong accents. So in order for the teachers to know that they are from different speech groups. Next is standard language. Standard language is idealized variety. It exists in most people, and people assume that standard language is accepted official language in their community or in their country. So where we can find it, for example, in examples in Japanese, we have like Yogyakartan Japanese version versus, for example, Malangnese Japanese or Surabayan Japanese or Banyumasan Japanese or Tagalnese Japanese. You can see that the form uh, used in Yogyakartan and Solonese Japanese are considered as more standard idealized form of language. In English, the standard English dialect will be that we are not coming, while non-standard English dialect would be like we ain't coming. The register and jargon. We have register and we have jargon. The register is language appropriate in a specific situational, occupational, or topical context. A jargon is a technical vocabulary assisted with specific area or word or interest. So, for example, like this is more specific area. It helps to create connections among those who see themselves as insiders and to make it different with the outsiders. Register and jargon is related to one another. The register is broader, it's in sentence level or discourse level, while a jargon is in vocabulary level. Next is slang. Slang is specialized vocabulary used by those outside established higher status groups, like which is commonly found, for example, like speaking between pedicab drivers or between ojol, ojek online, or other particular groups which are outside of bigger, higher status groups. There are some um, slides which made by analysis which made by our friends in class, for example, like the slangs used by people in Malangnese, um, like the Bahasa Walikan. This is type of slang which is used by certain groups. You can also consider Bahasa Malangan or the dialects which you switch the arrangements of letters in certain words into not only slang but also bigger categories like the dialects if it is complex. I mean, not only involving certain vocabularies, but it can be extended to sentences, or it can be just like a vernacular style of a language. Next, this is an example of slangs in other variations of practice, which has been described by our friends.